Ecological eruptive dominance, and what's the deal with all these blasted, boxy, boring buildings? By the end of this video, you're gonna know why these buildings keep popping up in the parts of your city that used to be cool. You're gonna know what they're called, how they work, and then I'm gonna leave it up to you to decide whether or not you think they're a good thing. Behind me is what architects would call a podium building, often referred to as a 5/1. They're called that in part because the International Building Code created a standard for making cheaper, safer buildings. If you build a structure completely out of timber, it's cheaper, though you won't be able to build it as big. If you build it completely out of concrete and steel, it might be safer, but it's expensive. Podium building splits the difference. The first floor, the podium, is made of concrete and steel. And then by right, you can stack up the 5 floors of timber frame construction on top. 5/1. They tend to mostly pop up in places where demand is unnaturally high. Often it's that part of town that used to be a little industrial, a little gritty, but it was cheap, so artists moved in, made it cool, and then everyone wanted to live there. But because there was no method in which to add housing incrementally, the demand built up until bam, sudden intensification, and overnight you have these monstrosities. Now here's where the shoulder angel comes in. It says, hey, you might not like how these look or feel, but look at places like Austin. They built a ton of housing, a ton of 5/1s, and compared to other boom towns, their market cooled off. But then the shoulder devil pops up. Yeah, but at what cost? Haven't these parts of town sort of become sterile and lost their soul? Why do all these places feel the same? If you're monitoring a forest and one plant suddenly starts to dominate the whole forest, you don't blame the plant. You ask what happened in this environment to make this species so dominant? In America, we've all but banned the middle process of building. Duplexes, small apartments, and corner buildings. So demand stacks up until it stacks up in one big product. The podium building is not the disease, it's the symptom. And you might think, well, we love places like Paris and their 5-story buildings. Why do they feel so different? They were developed incrementally over time. Swap out a store, add a floor, fill in this space with another building. They didn't freeze neighborhoods and then panic build all at once. And here's a localized example. Near Florida State University, housing demand has been up for decades. Throughout the entire city, neighborhoods weren't allowed to develop by right. In this specific case, the pressure was released on the nearby neighborhood of All Saints. Now, do some retail spaces in these buildings still sit empty? Yeah. These are built primarily for the housing above. Demand is still coming for those retail spaces. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Building 500 to 1,000 units in one area protects you from having to sprawl out even further as a city. Clear-cutting forest off on the edges of town to make way for 1,000 single-family homes. So here's my take. Like a lot of people, I don't love how these look. When I see them, I don't see that something just went wrong, but that something has been wrong for a long time. While I would never outright fight to stop one of these things from being built, I do think we should be fighting for them to not be the only answer or solution to this problem. Every neighborhood, like an ecosystem, should be allowed to evolve into its next stage. Let lots of small building happen throughout the community earlier to keep all this concentrated pressure from happening.